Hey, it's live. I'm here with Peter Simeti. There he is. You guys can see him. Check it out. Pete, what's
Hey,
up?
hey, hey.
Me
What's
and
up,
Pete were just
Narwhal?
talking behind the scenes, and I was like, "You sound kind of like your voice cadence sounds a little bit like Todd McFarlane." Does anyone ever tell you that?
No way, really? Wow.
I
Okay.
bet you could do a Todd McFarlane
I probably could.
impersonation.
It's a little bit, like he gets in there and he starts talking about the Spider-Man, and all of a sudden, yeah, you Spidey swinging through the
See,
city.
it's perfect. Are you and him from a similar area of
No,
like?
not at all whatsoever. I grew up on Long Island, and Todd is Canadian, right?
Oh,
I
okay.
think he's from Toronto. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Everyone in
that's
Canada
funny.
is from Toronto or Vancouver or Montreal or there's only like four cities in Canada, right?
Yeah. It's always a surprise when you find out who's from Canada. You're like, man, the Canadians can claim quite a few like super
Oh yeah.
successful. Like, who's Norm Macdonald is Canadian. He's like the best comedian, kind of. He's
Oh
my
yeah,
favorite.
yeah. A lot of my favorite hockey players are Canadian.
Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah. So yeah, we'll let the chat kind of filter in, and then we'll promote. We'll look at you got some live campaigns. Check out the website. But we're kind of just chit chatting too, and I was gonna ask you just a few questions because it's been a while since we chatted. And the last time, a lot of the questions I almost want to ask again. Like I was like, what was it like getting a movie made of your comic? But
Oh Lord, don't ask
yeah,
that. That's depressing.
oh yeah, that's funny. Because the chair got turned into a movie. Is there anything like that on the horizon for Alterna, or do you not?
I mean, in a way, I guess it's not. Alterna's not directly involved with that. Even with the chair, it's me. Alterna doesn't actually own anything, so Alterna doesn't own my stuff. Alterna doesn't own someone else's stuff. Alterna is Alterna. Everything at Alterna is creator owned. So, as far as like making the movie went and stuff like that, that wasn't like an Alterna production necessarily. It's not like the way like Marvel Studios or whatever, that kind of a thing. But as far as us having a property that's being in development right now, we've got Trespasser, and
Oh yeah,
but Trespasser, like I said, I'm not even involved with it, which is great. I love not being involved with it. I want to just stick to doing comics. But
yeah.
that's Justin M. Ryan. He's the writer creator. Christian Rossi was the artist, and they're developing it. I think it's the co-writer of the Wonder Woman screenplay or something. I think his name is Jason Fuchs, and they just got a director attached. And when you guys all find out about information, I find out about it too, which honestly is fun. The other way around, being a producer, the way I was with the chair. Oh man, it's not a horrible experience, but I'd much rather stick to making comics.
Yeah, that's a lot of people have echoed that. Like Frank Miller said that, and Alan Moore, they get kind of turned off if they get too involved. There's a quote from one of the famous authors from Hollywood back in the day. He said, like, the best way to collaborate with Hollywood is you run up to the border of California, throw the script over the edge, they'll throw a sack of money back, and you take it and you run as
I,
fast as you
I,
can.
I can relate. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's draining, man. It really is. It's not like it's not so much like you're creating as much as you are constantly playing psychological warfare, and
yeah,
comics kind of can have that too sometime, but it's not my passion. Maybe if film was my passion, I'd feel differently about it, but comics are my passion, so I tolerate my pain threshold is a lot higher for what happens in comics as opposed to film. For film, it was like, oh my god, really,
yeah.
again, I gotta do this again, and you gotta keep on doing negotiations and talking, and every single thing. And then being on the East Coast and they're on the West Coast, every single thing is it's such a huge time difference, especially once you get into later. If they're done shooting at midnight, you got to talk to them and do like the daily kind of stuff at like 3 to 4 in the morning. It
Oh yeah.
gets it gets a bit grueling, but yeah, I'd much rather stick to comics.
Yeah, the Clint made a good point. Clint Stoker, who his book's with Alterna right now, Downcast, and I've worked with him a little bit. He's awesome guy, and he said something about comics that's interesting is a a real high percentage of readers also make comics, like way higher than movies, where you look like a movie viewer who also makes movies. It's like 1% or less. Comics, it's as high as like 50% potentially. Everyone's got a little something in the
I
works because it's so
I
accessible. Anyone can
guess
do it.
that's right, but only I can't imagine anyone that's making a movie that's never watched movies.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
I think it would be 100%. Whoever's making movies is certainly watching them. Now, as far as the audience goes, as far as the audience, making them and that kind of a thing, that's probably what he means. And I'm obviously misinterpreting it, but that's probably, yeah, closer to that.
Oh yeah, yeah, and part of it is like, I don't know. I wonder if that's why, because comics, it is like more volatile or whatever. People get, but it's
Yeah,
if
it's
you're
it's like the Wild West, because there still isn't, even among the bigger companies, there still doesn't seem to be too much of a, this is how you do it, this is what needs to be done. Everyone is kept in line, and that's what you do, and pros and cons towards that stuff, right? But at the same time, there's no, like there's SAG, there's the Writers Guild, there's the Directors Guild, there's all kinds of different things you have to go along with. You got to get various permissions, etc. But in comics, you just kind of come in there guns blazing, and everyone's constantly making their own trail, which is, it's fun and exciting, but at the same time, it does lead to the same sort of situations that you would get in a Wild West scenario where it's every person for themselves.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. And we're talking about Trespasser. Is it like it all with Alterna? Like you have the lineup of issues, and does one sometimes you'll be like, ooh, this one's kind of a hit, or this one's getting a little bit bigger of a response than the others. Does like because I kind of remember that about Trespasser when it came out. Is like that was the one most people were talking about. I bought it based on some word of mouth and enjoyed it, and like so I don't know how does
I
that.
think I think when it comes to that, I mean, I look at, if I'm a film producer. I mean, I guess I have been a film producer, so I guess as a film producer, as a former film producer, I would look at the Alterna lineup, and Trespasser would be one of the ones I would go to develop. Honestly, because of the fact that it looks like it could be done well, not with not too big of a budget.
Oh yeah,
It's the most kind of grounded of a couple of things. It's like a survival sci-fi alien story, and then there's an ending to it. Even if the ending is relatively open in a way to interpretation, there's still an ending. So it's easy to just kind of adapt that story and just put it to a film. Now, can you make a series out of it? Can you expand upon the world? Yeah, I'm sure that they could if they wanted to do that. But at the same time, it's one of those things. The same thing with the chair. The chair it's just people. It's just people in prison.
yeah,
It's nothing super fantastical about it. You don't have to have a huge effects budget. All the effects are practical. And I don't know what they're going to do. I imagine that to a certain extent they can't do it 100% practical, but they could do most of it practical with Trespasser. But yeah, I think you look at it as a film producer and you go, that's one of the ones that would work. It's a good story, and it's not too expensive to make. Let's try that out.
yeah. That's cool. That's fascinating. Because yeah, so because there are ones that alternate to like Blood Realm and Red Koi and a few
Oh
others. They
yeah,
look awesome, but those are like big budget kind of
Blood
things.
Realm would be expansive, especially if it was live action. It'd be beautiful. If like Guillermo del Toro's out there and he wants to take a crack at it, I think he would do really good, or even Peter Jackson.
Yeah,
But yeah, Red Koi as well, with the expansiveness of just the settings and the kinds of characters and the wardrobe and all those other things, to bring these things to life. We make a comic and we sit there, and the sky's the limit for the budget. You don't want to sit there and think about the effects budget and the wardrobe budget and this and that and whatever. You just go in there and you tell a great story utilizing the medium of comic books, which is what you should do. Every single comic creator should do that. You shouldn't let Hollywood dwindle it down. I hate seeing comic books where it looks like they're already counting the pennies for the film budget.
yeah,
I think that's hurt the comic medium over the years. But yeah, there's comics that are fantastical and epic in scale at Alterna, and then there's ones that are a little bit more intimate, a little bit more down to earth. And of course, sometimes those might be more likely to get greenlit for a film, but you never know. All you need is the right producer, the right director, whoever comes along and sees that comic. And it doesn't matter. It could be Blood Realm, it could be Red Koi, it could be whatever. And you go, I think I could do something with this. And then who knows, maybe they do. But that's not
yeah,
the point of us making comics, of course. We're not trying to pitch everything for
yeah. You
Hollywood.
can tell when comics are overly pandering. It's like that net. It's almost like a new type of comic. It's like the Netflix pitch comic,
Yeah.
and that nobody likes those. Yeah, that's funny. Let me ask you this. So when did you form Alterna? Like it was a while ago. Was it like
Yeah,
2010 or
this
something?
this is the start of our 17th year.
Oh
So
yeah.
what is that? 2006. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So that's yeah, that's awesome. So one of my questions is, so we went over some of that in the previous interview when we were talking, but it's 17 years is a good chunk to like see the ups and downs of kind of the industry and you and your company too, kind of within that. And like have you noticed any like big trends or any like even like, 2016 kind of Comicsgate, Trump, all that happens. Alterna, like did it get a boost when that happened? And like I don't know, but
Sort of. I mean, I think it kind of went hand in hand with just the independent spirit. I think it was more like the counterculture, I suppose you could say, of what
yeah,
was occurring in the mainstream. And anytime there's like a unification of people coming together like that, there's always a rising tide that lifts all the boats. But yeah, I've noticed trends over the years. I mean, I've always tried to kind of zig when most of the industry zagged. So it's
oh yeah,
kind of one of those things where in the beginning, I mean, the first 10 or 11 years of Alterna, we mostly just put out graphic novels and trades, and everyone thought that was nuts. And then all of a sudden, by the end of those 10 or 11 years, everyone was flooding the market with graphic novels and trades to the point that the turnaround time at bookstores was like a month to 3 months. Before it was like 6 months to a year. You had to have them on the shelf. And, unless you wanted to pay for your space, that was it. So you were gone after a month or 3 months because there was so much inventory that they needed to get out there. So the turnaround was crazy. But
and that's for trades. You're saying,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
so
because a trade
around
it needs to be able to sit on the shelf a little bit.
so around 2015 or so, I was really noticing that was happening a lot, and I decided that, well, we got to start doing single issues, and I got to start doing them affordably. I wanted to put them out on newsprint. And eventually we found a newsprint printer, and we kind of been doing that since. And it was a huge, huge boost for everything across the board with the company. We could do the issues cheaper. We could have, as a result of that, have a larger base of readers coming in. And just having distribution at the time, before distribution kind of got extra weird at the comic shop level, it was advantageous to us to have this wider distribution for single issues because there's more fanfare around it. They don't really dedicate like a new release wall, most shops, to graphic novels and trades. It's mostly single issues that come out. So a lot of issues that we put out at the time, even though they were already on graphic novels or released digitally or something like that, it found a whole new audience because people thought that these were completely new books because they didn't really see the graphic novels and trades before. So that told me that all the stuff you hear, especially at the comic shop level, of graphic novels or the future and everything's graphic novels and they are great sellers. That might be so with certain publishers, but largely you could even look at the sales numbers. You could still have comics selling like at 100,000. You're never really going to see in the charts a graphic novel selling at 100,000 through Diamond, especially.
Yeah,
I don't even think there's been one that's made it past 30 to 50,000, and that might even be a real highball of a guess. Most of the time, they're around 10 to 20,000 for like the best selling graphic novel through Diamond. Again, book distribution is a whole different beast. There's a lot of stuff involved with that. We were on newsstand for a bit, and it was interesting. It was a good advertising experiment, but it wasn't really a good experiment or a good avenue to sell books because there
yeah,
was like no accountability and 100% returnability. It was like, hey, what could go wrong other than
yeah,
them just fudging the numbers left and right?
yeah. In the end, is it like at this point? It's like the the model is like direct connection to the customer via YouTube, via and kind of like some crowdfunding, Twitter. Is that kind of where you're at now, or is it a little bit different? Or
Yeah, but crowdfunding. I mean, there's trends with that too. Is that what you're asking?
yeah, and kind of tied in with that, I'm curious of what you want to. This is like a big question, but curious any what you think of trends for the future. And I have one tweet up of with Tyler here, and I think I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he is a big proponent of digital, and I'm curious what you think about that, and that as a potential for the future too. With this overarching question of people are saying that the industry right now is kind of weak and so people are trying to brainstorm ways to beef it up a little bit. And I don't know, yeah, like the numbers. It's obviously true kind of with mainstream, especially compared to manga. Crowdfunding numbers are like a little bit down from last year, maybe. I'm not sure, but it's like some of that's just with the economy. Um, so if the economy comes back, crowdfunding would come back. But yeah, do you have any visions or thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, with crowdfunding, there's always going to be certain things that are kind of hot right now, and certain things that aren't, or maybe they're fading away. And then you get certain price points that, in the beginning, especially when something is hot, the price point is what it's at. But then, as more people enter the market and are making product, price point starts to become a competitive level thing too. So people start creating different deals at certain price points, or lowering their price point, or whatever it may be. You start just getting more competition across the board. Digital, honestly, digital. There's no reason to believe with comics that digital is the future of comics.
See, this
Um,
that's interesting, and I'm curious. Yeah, to hear you say
I've
more
yeah,
about that.
I've never seen anything that even comes close to saying that would be the future. Digital would have to really all of a sudden take over big time in comics. I mean, Comixology is kind of having a tough go at it right now, right? Isn't Amazon kind of shaking them around a bit?
Yeah,
Um, uh, all I can say is, from our own experience with digital over the years, and we were one of the first publishers to get on board with Comixology early. We were at Drive Through Comics for a bit. We were one of the first publishers to have digital comics on Kindle when they were first starting out. I tried going down that digital road really early on, and it's a tough go because of the fact that it's kind of flatlined at around 8 to 10% of sales for the longest time. And unless it all of a sudden overtakes and goes and shoots up to like 40 to 50% of publisher sales or industry wide sales, there's no reason at all to be like, digital's the future of comics. It's just
yeah,
overwhelmingly people are not choosing to get comics digitally when they can get them physically. Now, if you skew your metrics and you go, we're not releasing it physically, we're just releasing it digitally, and then you point to it and go, see, 100% of that comic sales are digital. Well,
yeah,
that's a bullshit metric. So
yeah,
you can't kind of compare it like that. But again, our experience isn't necessarily someone else's or an industry-wide thing. It's just something I've seen over the course of time, though, especially over the course of Alterna's time of 17 years. It's kind of digital is where it's at. It's good. I think it's utilized okay right now. I think it could be utilized better across the board. But as far as being like the future in terms of, print is going to be dead in comics and digital is going to overtake it or whatever it may be, I don't really see that happening.
yeah. You know what it reminds me of is people predicting the downfall of movie theaters, and it keeps not happening. And maybe it will happen sooner or later, but they've actually been predicting it since like the 50s or whatever. But or like the 80s.
Not
I
for
don't know
nothing.
the
I,
year.
I constantly see, I thought Tyler said like a month ago he wasn't doing drama stuff anymore. And now here, never mind.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know if this fully counts as drama, but
Well,
he
only like the calling out. Like that's the thing is like when you're calling out people and whatever. I get like if you're like, hey, here's a problem and here's a solution that I'm thinking this should be done. But it's so easy to say here are all the problems and then never actually offer too many solutions. If you're doing solutions and you're having your experiences and you're like, okay, we noticed this. Like I just said about Alterna's experience. Okay, we noticed this. I noticed that this is how it's going. This is what I'm doing. And that's a testament to what I'm doing. I don't know if it worked for you or the next person or industry wide, but that's my experience. And this is a problem that we met. And this is a solution that I came up with. Right or wrong, whatever it is, this is what it is. But those things to me are more helpful of kind of like, well, what did you do? Did you notice this was a problem? Because it's easy to sit here and say like, that's a problem, this is a problem, that's a problem, but okay, we can all see the problems. Let's come up with solutions,
yeah.
and not for someone else, for us, for ourselves. Because you can't say, I can't go to you, Narwhal, and say, I see a problem with something that you're doing here. You should do it like this. And you go, Pete, well, you kind of have the same problem. Are you doing that solution too? And I go, oh, me? No, I'm not doing that at all. I'm not taking my own advice. Are you crazy?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. That's like a little bit what you're saying of how the film industry can be the psychological warfare almost.
Yeah, 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 and we see that a lot in comics, just in general, and not to pick on poor Tyler here, but we see that a lot in comics in general, where there's like a lack of reassessing our own faults, and where we went wrong, and where we could have gone down a different path instead. And I
Yeah,
think then all of a sudden we get in this comfort zone where we think like we have to always just do it this way, no matter how many times it doesn't work out. It's kind of like that definition of insanity, right? You do the same thing over and over again, expecting
yeah,
different results. And we sit here and we go, that's okay for us. But when someone else is doing that, we point it out and say, hey, that's wrong. Don't you realize that that's wrong? And then they go, well, don't you see that you do the same thing over and over again too, and you keep expecting the same different results? And you go, yeah, but that's me. I mean, hey, we're talking about you
yeah,
here.
yeah.
it's it's
You know what
it's
I'm
such a
curious about
weird
too?
atmosphere.
It's true. I'm curious about the Shonen Jump app because I hear a lot about it and I hear it's
Yeah,
very
to me, I would
affordable.
say look at manga. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and but it's that would be hard because one of the things they do is they have access. Like Alterna could almost do something like that. Because they have access to the backlog of a lot of material, and you can kind of get a subscription or whatever, and it can be kind of cheap, and you can read it digitally and catch up and find stuff and be convenient. But yeah, I mean, I'm just curious what numbers that does. I think it does do quite well. Manga's already so beefy. I heard a crazy number but even percentage, I think manga is still mostly physical.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. Well, I
yeah,
mean, you know, it's easy too to highlight a lot of things going on right now in comics and say that it's the result of a couple of years worth of stupidity and bad decision making, or whatever it may be. The truth is that this is a road that's comics have been going down for almost what 30 years, maybe more. It's a lot of different things that have occurred over 30 to 40 years. Do something and they did that instead. They should have not put the pedal to the metal in this instance and just kind of kept doing something with this and then do a little bit of that, and then they didn't do that. They just went full scale, do that instead. They did it multiple different times. There's so many different points where comics had the ability to not go down one path and instead went down the other. Now, is that kind of like hindsight is 2020? In a way, yes. But if you look at it at the time and go, okay, well, look, if comics start abandoning a younger audience and start getting away from character consistency and continuity and all that other stuff and stop doing the gimmicks and stop doing all of that, um, don't blame the customer. Like in the 90s boom with the crash, it's always been like, oh, it's the collector bubble burst. That's literally just called we blame the customer. The customer didn't
yeah,
come along.
that's
It's the,
funny.
it's the customer's fault that they don't come along and buy cases of useless garbage anymore. It's not the
Yeah,
publisher's fault that they're cranking out gimmick after gimmick and the customer caught on eventually. No, that's not what happened there. It's the customer. They should have kept buying cases of crap. Why? What the hell? We were making them. Why didn't they buy them? So the comics started all of a sudden shifting blame for every bad decision onto the customer, and it set a trend, and it set a weird precedent for doing that. And we noticed that over the past 10 or so years that happened a lot. And then, of course, you can only blame the customer so long until the customer's like, you know what? I'm going somewhere else. And
yeah,
then, lo and behold, you lost your younger generation and admitted that you kind of are defeatist in a way of saying, oh, well, video games and there's this and there's that and the other thing, and that's what's taking their time. They don't like comics anymore. Really? Okay. So you lose them, you lose a good 20-year span of that generation, and that's all you really need to cripple that kind of market. And then you lose a lot of the lifelong customers by crapping all over them consistently. So, what? Your comics, honestly, is lucky for every damn reader it has right now. And every single Alterna reader out there right now, believe me, I'm totally aware of how lucky we are to have you. We're grateful to have you and appreciative. But comics is a industry wide medium entertainment source, whatever it may be, should be on their hands and knees going, thank you for sticking with us through all the crap we've put you through, because it's been that way. And
yeah.
the industry doesn't even want to say anything like that. How
I
how
know.
often do most people, even in comics, thank the readers? It's very, very rare. You see a lot of companies and bigger creators. It's rare. They are there, but it's rare, and it's sad that it's rare. It shouldn't be rare at all. It should be every single damn time a new issue comes out. Thank you guys so much for picking up and giving it a shot. It should be that every friggin' time. And even if you pick up an issue and you hate it, thank you for giving it a shot. I hope you liked it at least a little bit enough to give it a shot on the next issue. Maybe you like it a little bit more, but thank you for picking this one up. How hard
Yeah,
is that?
it's frustrating because it's so basic yet. But what you said there too. It's very fascinating to point out that the seeds of that kind of mentality started in the '90s, and I hadn't put that together. That is very interesting.
Yeah, so like
I
we can't have like a quick solution for a problem that's kind of been percolating for like 30 years.
Yeah,
It's going to take a lot, and it's going to take a lot from the very top. And the very top at this point, though, is looking at it and go, comics. The hell do we care about those businesses for? We have IP, we have movies and film and merchandising. Comics
yeah,
could just, that's the Happy Meal toy. I don't give a crap about the comics, and
yeah.
that's what happened. If they were
There,
still 100% comic companies at the top, and maybe they could have a couple movies here and there and merchandising, but if they were still primarily comic companies, you wouldn't have seen any of this crap happen.
and they don't see their comic companies as like IP development experiments really anymore. It's sort of just written off. It's like a tax write off. They don't care if it's I don't know, they have a word for it, but it's like George Soros kind of like cash ways that it can like lose money and they still make money or whatever.
Yeah, it's like the producers. You ever see that movie or that play where
Yeah,
they figure out they could actually make more money if it's a failure than if it actually succeeds?
yeah, that's
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
yeah, that's hilarious. I heard an interview with Sean Gordon Murphy and Mark Millar, and Sean Gordon Murphy was like, if they fix the industry, that would equal that the industry sort of get like turned inside out, and a lot of people would get kicked out. So everyone in the industry right now, they actually know that, so they don't want to fix it. So it's funny. It's like the industry. It's in its own best interests of this crappy version of the industry we have to not get better, and that's like it's already past that tipping point of being
Yeah,
negative.
yeah. As soon as the biggest companies became the way that they are, just part of giant media conglomerates. As soon as it kind of became that was their destiny, that then comics fate was sealed as far as that's concerned. But as far as comics, the medium is different from comics, the industry. Comics, the medium, is stronger than ever, whereas comics, the industry, it really isn't. And I think that's the conversation that a lot of people are kind of they're kind of confusing, because when people are like, comics are dying, comics are hurting, a lot of people look around and go, there's so many comics, there's more comics now than ever before, and there's so many talented people making them. What are you talking about? Comics are dying. And that's not the conversation that necessarily that person who's saying that is having. They're talking about the industry. They're talking about in terms of the industry wide economic effects that are occurring. But medium wise and independent wise, especially independent wise, it's been doing pretty great. I mean, right now we've got a really big experiment of a campaign with the winter campaign going on, where this is the first ever one we've had where on Indiegogo it's completely new pre-order stuff. There's no back issue stuff. There's no in-stock items available for add-ons. It's all 100% new stuff on this campaign, and then we have it split between this and the Alterna site. And Alterna's site, they're both $5,000 goals for a combined goal of 10,000. Usually we would have just run an Indiegogo campaign with a $10,000 goal. We would have then had back issues that pertain to the new issues that are being offered, and there would be no pre-ordering on the Alterna site. We would only release things on the Alterna site once the Indiegogo is done fulfilling. So this is kind of an experiment to see where people are feeling comfortable about backing. So far it's playing out the way I thought it would play out, to be perfectly honest, especially because it is a bit of a experiment to see where people would go, whether it be Indiegogo, whether it would be our website, where would they spend money, where would it be more of, here or there. Economically, it's one of those things where we're definitely going to hit our goal, 10,000 across the board. That's not even a question in my mind. But in terms of how much do we raise comparing it with previous campaigns, that remains to be seen. I'm really interested to see where this goes, but right now it is a bit of an experiment.
Yeah, which one's doing better, the Indiegogo or the website?
Indiegogo has more backers, which is what I thought would happen, but the website is raising more money, which is also what I thought would happen.
Oh,
So,
yeah, that's kind of fascinating. Yeah, so this backer number reflects like returning customers because you can't even like you can't buy the number one issues on this campaign. So if you want to do that, chat, we got 50 people watching. If you're interested, like I did earlier today, you go on the site and you can get the back issues. And you did you say, Peter, you don't do trades anymore? So it's like you buy the bulk. It's kind of fun, I think. You buy the bulk, like you get 1 through 6 or 1 through 12 even.
yeah, it's issues. And then the closest we get to trades now would be the Alterna Giants, when every now and then we collect like a story arc. But
Oh, okay.
even then, that's rarer because of the fact that the new direction of Alterna for the past year or so has been more towards ongoing series that are episodic format. So you can't just kind of pick a story arc and turn it into a giant, because it might be like issues 1 to 4, but issues 1 to 4 are kind of all standalone issues. Now we could still do that, but we'll see what happens when we sell out of those issues, and then we'll go to a giant, and then that's how we'll keep things kind of reprinted in a
Yeah.
way.
You know what's a little interesting there is that's something I've noticed is I really am annoyed at in general, this is like Netflix too, but I'm annoyed at the lack of episodic storytelling. Like if you go to the
Oh,
90s,
it's
you have
horrible, man, horrible.
yeah, you have X-Files, Star Trek, all these amazing episodic where every single episode's great. It's all its own story. You can jump in at any point, and it's so awesome. But then there's nothing like that today. Everything is these ongoing, and a lot of it's
Oh
filler. A
Lord,
lot of it's boring. If it has a bad payoff at the end, you feel like you wasted a
it's
bunch.
exhausting. Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Because there's so many different things where it seems like it's even starting off really good at first, and maybe the first or the second season are pretty good. Talking about TV shows and things like that right now, but then of course, yeah, like you said, with the payoff with the ending, sometime it turns into like you look at that and you go, oh my God, that was so unsatisfying. Why did I just spend like 5 years of my life watching this? You
Yeah.
know, but yeah, but with episodic style stuff, and you could still do these little mini story arcs. They used to have like these 2 or 3 part events, that kind of thing. But the episodic style, all I could think is when I was a kid, Batman the Animated Series. That was like the pinnacle of storytelling for me
Oh
as a
yeah.
kid with TV shows, right? And everything was episodic except for a couple of episodes here and there that were like a two-parter. And you could jump in at any point in time, and you understood who was who. You got what it was because there was strong characterization. It was very plot driven, but there was character driven elements as well that helped develop the characters along the way. So, and the continuity stayed. So certain events that would happen, you didn't watch an episode 40 episodes later, and he sees, I don't know, Clayface again and is acting like he doesn't know who the hell Clayface is. It would be one of those things of like, it keeps building upon these events that had previously happened. It was the way comics were great for so long. Same thing, episodic style storytelling, and every now and then they'd have a story arc. And then all of a sudden, comics became event driven, and then our storytelling across the board has become event driven. Now our freaking movies are event driven, and it's like homework to keep up with any of them for the most part. When I'm
Yeah.
talking about comic related kind of stuff, but we're getting away from that. King Cryptid is the same thing with my own book, my own series. It's episodic, it's ongoing. There's only going to be a handful of 2 or 3 parters, but most of it is in there. You can enjoy an issue, and hopefully the reason you want to read the next one is because you just enjoyed the one you read. But it
Yeah.
builds the continuity. There's an overarching subplot that's there, and there's editor's notes that tell you, go see this issue if you missed what they're talking about here, if it's a real important plot element. All these fun things that used to make comic book storytelling fun. That's what I want to bring back, and that's what comics I think is really sorely needing. And instead of saying, "Hey, you go out there, you go do that," I'm gonna do it.
Cool. Is that like a top-down decision, like for alternative from recently, the last few years or something, where you're
Yeah,
moving
for
it more
yeah,
towards episodic?
that's definitely more because like Wolf and Batsy's that way, Horace H. Hoover is that way, Unit 44. Unit 44. It's funny because the first 4 issues kind of set up the world, the characters. It was a mini series, and Wes kind of left it for a bit. He had a kid, and his wife had the kid.
Yeah.
But yeah, he participated somewhat, I suppose. So he was raising his kid, and I think the kid turned like 1, and then Wes must have got the comic bug, and it bit him again. And he came back and said, "Look, Pete, I know that you're a fan of the series, and that you always were saying about case files, and they could do these things, and because they're like bumbling Area 51 agents." And
Cool.
I said it would be great if you did a series where it was every issue was like a case file, and it was like a new thing. It was episodic. If you ever want to do it again, let me know if you want to do it that way. And he's like, "Yeah, I really want to do it this way. I got a lot of ideas for it." And so he pitched it. He hit the ground running with a new creative team, and now he's on issue 7 on this campaign. And he's got like I think up to like issue 15 or something like that planned right now, and he's working on I think like issue 11 or something with the artist right now. So they're well ahead of where they got to be, and he's psyched about it. And that's the kind of stuff I want to see. Even Blood Realm has it's like a mix of like story arc storytelling, but it's transitioning a bit more into like episodic. So even if the episodic style isn't like each issue is one issue, is a self-contained story, it's still like maybe it's a two-parter or it's a three-parter or sometimes it's just a one issue. Rob is kind of really getting to a really nice place with Blood Realm right now where he's developing certain characters. I can't spoil a lot of it just yet, but there's a fan favorite character called Chiron Morvel, and he's developing more stories with this character. So Blood Realm's kind of going to go down that path.
Cool.
But
You know what's fun about that is he probably didn't plan that when he starts the story, but then you get the feedback from the audience, and all of a sudden there's a fan favorite character that comes out of nothing, kind of takes you by surprise. It's like the story takes a life of its own, kind of, and you can kind of take advantage of that.
yeah.
Let me ask you this: How so? King Cryptid, that's not out yet? You're working on it behind
No,
the
it's
scenes?
not out yet. Issue 4 is almost done. 1, 2, and 3 are done in terms of being like all of the creative elements are done. Once 4 is done, we're going to go to the printer, and then campaign fulfillment's going to begin. That's probably going to happen towards the end of February, early March, and then fulfillment's probably going to be like about a month or so. But right now,
Nice.
it's in demand still, and it's doing really well. It's the best for a single uh, property at Alterna. It's raised the most money and had the most backers. So I'm super grateful for the backers out there that are giving it a shot. I hope everybody really loves it. So far, when I've shared stuff about King Cryptid, they've really loved it. It's been a real fun ride with a lot of the artists on there. Every issue is going to kind of have a new artist, and not new necessarily to the series, but unless it's a story arc, most of the issues don't have a back-to-back artist. It's the same artist, and I put an artist in there that works with the story as best as
Yeah.
possible. So if the story has more horror type elements, I get an artist in there that's better with that. If it has more sci-fi, I get an artist for that. If it's kind of more of like a more dramatic or more humor elements or whatever it may be, I get an artist for that. So I kind of it's fun pairing up the artist, playing like general manager and pairing up the right person for the right position.
Yeah, I like that too. I think about that a little bit of just it's cool when the art and the and artist and the writing match up perfectly. So how is it like speaking of this episodic thing, it's fun because it's like that's its own kind of creativity, like the types of ideas where like, oh, this could support more than one story. Like you're saying the bumbling Area 51 dudes. Like you just say that, then you're like, oh that there's like 100 stories you could tell with that. And it's kind
Yeah,
of like
there's aliens and monsters and ghosts and paranormal and all these other millions of different things you can talk about and they could do. But if you have like these like everything's a story arc, everything's like 4 to 6 issues, and it turns into this beast of burden in terms of carrying these characters and this plot around. And is the payoff going to be worth it? Or can you just do one issue and then do another issue and then do another issue? I mean, it's more exciting to me as a storyteller to be able to tell something episodically and be able to play around with that. And the world building elements are organic all of a sudden, too, because all of a sudden now you're making all these new characters. And now when you have new characters, you've got a new setting. And now when you've got a new setting, you got to populate it with other characters. So everything just feeds upon itself. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you're like 5 to 6 issues in, and you've got an entire world, and you've got a cast of characters, and now you have all of those characters at your disposal. And then if you listen to your readers when they like certain characters, maybe you could bring them back for another issue. Even if you kill a character off, there's always a way to bring them back. So it's that kind of a thing. To me, that it's so much fun to do it that way. Whereas the 4 or 5 issue story arc thing. Yeah, I've done that before too. It's nowhere near as fun.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Like if you have an issue where it's episodic, you set your characters up. It's like a pilot almost at issue one. Then they're set up, and you're not even trying to like give them an epic character arc at that point. Like in X-Files or whatever, it's like Mulder and Scully. Eventually, they sort of have a little romance, but they kind of get set up and they stay the same. And any kind of arc might happen from a guest character that comes in, and that alone is like you're saying, it's like kind of more fun as a writer to be freed from that. And I've read stuff, this is almost like a general complaint maybe of that arcing stuff, is you can feel how the writers feel like they have to check these boxes of giving characters arcs and stuff, and it feels like Hollywoody tacked on, really fake almost.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you'd be better off just not doing it at that point. Like, don't even try
Yep.
to give them an arc if you can't make it like
Yeah,
a
all of a
kid.
sudden, like, there's characters that are so overdeveloped because that can happen. You overdevelop characters where you're like, why are you spending so much time with this character? No one gives a crap about this character. Stop forcing this character upon people, right?
Yeah,
And you give
that's
them this
funny.
tremendous backstory, and they got all this pathos and all these different motivations, and it's like, for what? They are like a third level character. Let them be a third level character. Drive all of that energy and all of that storytelling drama and expertise into the characters that are propelling the story, not just they're kind of in the background somewhat.
Yeah, and if it's episodic, then these kind of cool sweeping emotions for the reader that actually happen like authentically and naturally, it won't even necessarily be like a big sociopathic scheme by the writer to make you feel emotions. It kind of happens naturally just over time, and that
And
that
yeah, and the best thing too about letting some of those third tier characters lie low is that every now and then you can all of a sudden pull a fast one and surprise the audience by elevating that third level character. And all of
oh
a
yeah,
sudden, right at the right moment, there's a twist that occurs, and you reveal they were a spy or they were someone else or they've been having it out for this person the whole time, or and then the motivations start becoming clear. But when you're just kind of developing and giving so much time to certain characters, and at the lack of propelling the story the way it needs to be, and getting the plot to where it needs to be, um, all you're doing is kind of telling your reader, you know what? I'm the driver right now. Okay, you're the passenger. You sit right there, and we're going wherever the hell I want to go. And if I want to go to Wendy's and McDonald's and Taco Bell, and then backwards again to the grocery store and pick up a carton of milk on the way home, and where you're gonna sit right there. No
yeah.
reader is gonna want to be. They're just gonna go, yeah, I'm done. Thank you, Southern Cecil. Really appreciate it. But they're going to be done with it. There's no patience and tolerance for that when they're sitting there going, and when are we going to get to the story that matters? When are we going to get to these characters that have been doing this thing and you've been setting this up for so long?
Yeah, yeah, it's different. It is fun. This even conceptualizing it as I just think the freedom and the empowerment for the writer and the series kind of when it's episodic, it's so much. And it used to be like that in the '90s, like and where people can jump into like so you could back Wolf and Batsy or Unit 44 here, even though you can't get the back issues, and you could read them without reading the back issues, and it would still be a good intro to the series.
Yeah,
So
100%. Yeah, yeah. And if they do want to get the back issues, go straight to the Alterna site, and you can pre-order on there as well, and get there's like over 300 items, issues and merch and whatnot.
yeah,
You can even get digital as well as you back. So our entire digital lineup, for the most part, is on there
cool.
at like 99 cents an issue or so.
I have a couple questions about running Alterna. One question is, and we can even compare just for me doing in my own Indiegogo stuff, but how much of your work is packing and shipping boxes?
Oh man, when it's campaign fulfillment, that turns into like 90% of the day.
Yeah.
On a daily basis, I'd say it's more like maybe 20% of the day. But
Okay.
yeah. So on a daily basis, it's like 20% is that, then like 30% is probably setting up like social media, email, like newsletter, responding to emails, coordinating with creators and things like that. And then the rest, like at this point, especially being a creator and not just a publisher too, I'd say like 25 to 30%. The other a bit of that is my own stuff with like King Cryptid, and then the last bit would be if I have to get any art done anything like that. Maybe we're
Oh,
talking about
okay.
what? So it's like 60-20. So we got another 20. So
Yeah.
yeah, about 20% maybe be like, commissions and sketches and any art, and maybe making character development sketches for upcoming King Cryptid type stories.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I think it's 1 month a year about ends up being fulfillment, almost like full time. If it's like two part-time months or one full-time. But so yeah, that's like 1/12 of my whole year of work is just packing and shipping. But that it's a little bit more even for you, and partly because you're running the company, but
Oh
other
yeah, for if we're talking annually, I'd say it's probably closer to like 30 to 40% of my year is packing and shipping.
yeah. So
Um,
you have to kind of enjoy it. I don't mind it actually, as long as it's 1/12, but it
yeah, I
does get
don't. It's a nice break from computer work and internet crap and and all that kind of stuff. I mean, if I had my druthers about it, when it was fulfillment, I'd be doing 100% packing and shipping, and if I'd have to respond to emails and whatever else. But there's always some new fire to put out in the middle of that, and I find more than ever during fulfillment or when a new campaign is up. A bunch of fires just get started out of nowhere. And I'm like, okay, great. So I don't have just this to worry about right now and focus on it. I have to focus on this other nonsense as well.
Yeah, and does that like come with the territory? What there's a word for that too.
I
It's like
guess
it's almost inevitable, I
it's
guess,
it's
because
it's come
there's
with my territory.
yeah. Well, yeah, because I remember with Alterna, one of the first times you were on my radar was because freaking the SJWs were attacking you, even though you weren't technically Comicsgate, and you're still
Yeah,
on
well,
state.
people were upset that we just thanked whoever bought our books, which
Yeah,
is, I think, pretty commonplace. When you go to the store, I don't think they sit there and go, I want to see your entire internet history and who you voted for, and I want to see your whole life history of everything you've ever said and done before they thank you for your purchase.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm
So you,
trying to keep it
you
as
did something
simplistic
wrong,
and
and they rescind it.
non-invasive as possible.
Yeah.
And people don't like that. The funny thing though is that at a convention, I see many of these people who would bring torches and pitchforks to my doorstep. They just go, "Oh, thank you for
Yeah.
buying this, thank you for
But
reading." Oh, like a
then
normal
on
human
that
being.
note,
That's funny.
too, though, it's crazy because you did get swatted like a few years ago. Do you
Yeah,
remember?
yeah. Don't remind me. Don't remind me. We're almost coming upon an anniversary of it.
Oh
Goodness
yeah. See,
gracious.
that's terrible. So it's just funny that well, it's not funny, but you're like the middle of the path guy, and you almost get more attacks than than the people on either side or whatever. So
Yeah, well, I mean that's kind of the way it works, I guess, in life too.
yeah. So here's
Uh,
Cryptid. I just want to remind we got 56 people watching. Everyone, this one's still in demand. You said right? Yeah. So
yeah, yeah,
this
that
is
one's still in demand.
And this is one that you are writing, and it's episodics using different artists. One of the artists is Carlo Rossi, right? Or is that
Christian
Christian
Rossi,
Rossi?
yes, so Christian Rossi is on issue 1, and he does the colors also on issue 4. Then we got Nick Hunter on issue 2, which is a complete black and white issue as well. It's kind of an artistic choice because of the way the
Oh
story
yeah,
is set up. It's
I
on the
worked with
night of a new
I
moon.
worked
It's
with
in a
Nick
cave,
Hunter
so
from I think from you is how I discovered him. He's a Aussie.
oh, he's
He's a
he's great.
great guy, great artist. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's fantastic. And I
This
could
is his
talk.
art, Chad. If you guys are wondering, it's like really good. Obviously, you can
Oh
see.
yeah, yeah, he does great stuff. And then Alex Jovich is on issue 3. He's the artist of Unit 44's new issues, and then also he was the artist on Mr. Crypt. And then issue 4 is Kier Covington with his great art as well. The next campaign, once this fulfills, the next campaign will launch, and then that campaign is launching this year. It's going to be either May or June, and then that one's going to be issues 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. It's going to be 5 issues on that campaign. And issue 5, we're going to have Jeff Elkins. We're going to have Nick Hunter on I believe, issue 7. Issue 6 is Frankie B. Washington. Issue 8 will be Alex Jovich coming back again, too. And issue 9 will be Kier Covington. And I was going to do just 5 to 8 and do another 4 issues, but it works out better because the campaign I have planned for 2024 has issues 10 to 12 will be a 3-issue story arc. And Kier Covington's going to be an illustrator on that. And then I'm going to have issue 13 is going to be kind of treated like a documentary style issue, like a good catch up style issue. not a clip show kind of a thing, but more like there's a documentary on King Cryptid, because there's been so many things being with King Cryptid cited, and so much proof, because everyone and their mother has a cell phone nowadays. So you can't get away with just running around as a superhero cryptid anymore, and pretend that it's not going to get out, and word's not going to spread. So issue 13 is kind of going to be like King Cryptid Mania, where there's going to be, in his local town area, up by the White Mountains of New Hampshire, there's going to be tourist stuff all over the place, T-shirts, and a documentary interviewing people that say that they were rescued by King Cryptid, or they spotted him, or, just a fun little thing recapping this character and his kind of newish history, because he's an old character. He's like 500 years old, but in the past 30 or so years, he really hasn't been spotted. He's been laying low, he's been quiet, but there's been a lot of stuff going on lately where he's now resurfaced. So that issue 13, I'm already talking about issue 13, and I don't even have number 1 out in people's hands.
That's how it
yet.
always goes.
But I've got like at least 35 issues planned right now. And every single time I talk about it more and more, I get more ideas. I write those down, and I get down outlines. I get more characters down. I'm telling you, reader willing, I'm doing this series the rest of my life. This is my baby.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that, because it was like, what was the decision was developing maybe for a while, but then you're like, it's time and I want to do this, or how did it start, the nugget of the idea?
So yeah, King Cryptid, I mean, to do a story like this was something I've had in my mind for a while. But being a publisher is not the... I've said it before. If you want to be a good publisher, it's not going to leave you time to be a good creator. If you want to be a good creator, it's not going to leave you time to be a good publisher.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how it is, especially when you're starting out. Maybe eventually down the road you can kind of juggle it a bit better. But Alterna 17 years old, it's still, in my eyes, it's still a baby. It's not even legal yet. It can't even vote. So it's one of those things where I chose instead to be a good publisher and help people out. Now, because of the system, because of the way comics work out, Diamond is an all-consuming thing. If you live and die by whatever you get out into the Diamond system, and you have to make sure you get product out consistently. So that ate up a lot of my time. When we left Diamond in 2020, and it became something too that a lot of the creators also loved as well, because it enabled them to not be under the grind of like, you got to get out 4 to 6 issues a year at least, and without the time and space of crowdfunding. You just have to get these issues out and just hope to God that they sell well when you push them through Diamond. It became more like, hey, you could do 2 issues a year. We could space things out a bit. We could do quarterly campaigns instead of every single month we're soliciting 4 to 5 issues. We can just do this instead, and get them directly into the hands of the readers, as opposed to like 50 to 60% of the books solicited through Diamond that get bought by the retailers sit on the shelves and they languish. And I'd rather they just go to the reader, as opposed to sitting. I don't care if they go on a retailer shelf. I don't need the vanity of like, oh, hey, my book's at a shop, look at me. Who cares? If my book's in your home, that means the world. But if it's at a shop and it sits there for 30 years, what good is that? I make these things so people can read them and enjoy them. So it just made more sense, and it made more sense even financially, because we made more money. Even though we sold less books, we made more money than Diamond, than we did through Diamond. So let's say if you sold 2,000 copies to Diamond, which is pretty average for an indie company.
Yeah.
That would be like selling 666 copies directly, because of the money differential, because they took 62%. So it was one of those things of like, all right, well, we keep 2/3 of whatever we sell, and as long as we could sell 1/3 of what we used to sell, we're pretty much fine. So we did that, and it worked out for a lot of the creators. Some of the creators, I'm finding out, didn't like it, and they never told me about it, but hey, whatever.
That's interesting, yeah, because there is some perceived prestige about going through Diamond.
There is, yeah. It's like, you got that whole bragging rights thing. I got my book in a store, and I've had my book in stores all over the place throughout 17 years. I've had my books in every country you could possibly think of. I've had my books in thousands of stores, and I'm sure a lot of people saw them, but did they buy them? Did they take them home? Probably 40 to 30% of the books that we got out there were bought by people. That's just the way that most of that stuff works out.
Yeah.
So this way, I love it this way, to be honest. Because of this way, it opened up time for me. Whatever little time there was, a diamond was eating up within that system. It opened up time for me to do my own series. So King Cryptid was, I knew I always wanted to do like a monster series, an ongoing kind of monster of the issue series. And eventually it just dawned on me that I was like, why don't I just make the monster the star? So it became that kind of thing. Instead of like a human being the star or a team of humans or whatever, and that they battled monsters every issue, the monster's the star, and set it up down that road. And it just, everything kind of fell into place from there.
Cool. Is there a history of for you of like YouTube rabbit holes about Bigfoot or anything like that? Have you always kind of liked um, the cryptidnals or whatever? Or what are they? They're just called cryptids or
Oh yeah, well, I mean, yeah, they made up a name like a team name. I think those the guys at 656 for cryptidnals, but they're just cryptids.
yeah, yeah, cryptids.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Officially, they're just cryptids, cryptozoology and things like that. You know, you're talking
yeah,
about like
yeah.
Bigfoot, Mothman, Dog Man, etc., etc.
Have you ever gone down the YouTube rabbit hole missing 411?
Oh yeah, I've seen some of that. Man, oh man, there's so many good paranormal type shows and cryptozoology shows out there. But what really fascinates me more than anything is the mythology of cultures. So there's a lot of mythology in King Cryptid. I can't give away some of its origins. There's a lot of off the bat. There's a lot of Native American, American Indian mythology, but eventually we really hit upon a couple other uh, mythologies in terms of their cultures and their beliefs and their creatures and gods and whatnot. There's lots of great stuff in this that I think would be really interesting to people who follow that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in like paranormal, if you're interested in ancient history, if you're interested, if you're honestly, if you watch Ancient Aliens on any level, you're going to
Yeah.
be interested in something like King Cryptid because we touch upon a lot of different things throughout history. It's kind of almost like a historical fiction book in a way, mixed with like the supernatural and the paranormal.
Cool. That's cool. Cool. That's a good pitch. So last kind of question, and it can be a little bit broad, and maybe this will be another 10 minutes of chatting or whatever. But and by the way, we got 51 people watching here. Thanks everyone for being here, chatting with Peter Simeti about running Alterna and their winter campaign, King Cryptid, etc. A lot of the sales are on the website, so be sure to check out the website, sign up for the newsletter, all that. But so my question is, one thing when you're talking about King Cryptid, I'm like, there is almost an overarching kind of thing for all of our Alterna. I'm curious if there is what you might say it is, but it's like maybe a little bit like the 1950s horror kind of anthology, like Twilight Zone, but it's like kind of sci-fi monstery. There's definitely a monster
Yeah,
element.
yeah, I've noticed that that's kind of where it's been heading lately, and that wasn't really on purpose. Even though
Yeah,
like I'm the guy that approves of submissions, so it's like how could it not be on purpose? But it
yeah,
wasn't a conscious decision, and it's not like our lineup has always been really that way. It's just I'm finding there's a lot of people nowadays too that are telling stories in a similar vein, and they're getting more back towards the fantastical. And at least
yeah,
the ones that I want to accept at Alterna revolve around that. I've gotten submissions where it's very it's almost too grounded. It's not even like slice of life because slice of life is a little bit more relatable and universal. It's more like a diary turned into a comic. And that's just not what Altern is for. That's just not what I want to publish. I want to publish
oh,
stuff that's more escapist and stuff that you can't. Some publishers, I've said it before. Some publishers want to reflect the world outside your window, and at Alterna, we want to give you a window into other worlds. And
oh
that's
yeah.
the kind of thing I want to do, where every single series is its own universe, every single story is a new adventure. We get to follow along with these characters and see what they're up to.
Yeah. Alex Beerby says, "Do you have any promising submissions on the horizon?"
I wish I could say I do. I don't. Over the past year, and that's a big reason why I actually closed down the submissions for the first time in our 17-year history. Submissions used to be open 24/7, 365. And now they're just going to be open in April and September. And I'm noticing the reason for that being is because last year was the first year ever that I did not accept a single series submission. I accepted a bunch of like it came out on a Wednesday short story submissions, but not a single series submission. And the biggest reason for that being is that I'd say 90% of them we're just not ready yet. I'm finding there's a lot of people that are rushing to make comics. They're not
Yeah.
taking the time to learn how to write or draw or compose a panel or find anyone to really even work with that could help them do that. It's just, and they'll write it sometime in the submission. This is my first ever comic. This is the first ever time I'm drawing something. Why are you submitting to a publisher at that point? And it's not to say that I don't respect the enthusiasm, but utilize that enthusiasm, and instead of rushing to get it published at a publisher, use that and get better and draw and draw and draw, or write and write and write. Learn as much as you can about making comics, and take your time with it, and so many people I'm finding are rushing into it. And then the last 10%, I would say that honestly, it was a mix of people that just don't have a business plan whatsoever. So they're not viewing, and that's been a problem over the years with a couple creators at Alterna, where they have not viewed getting their creator-owned comic published as a business venture. It's just a fun thing I did.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not going to work out well for anyone involved. You can't go into it just going, I have no idea what I'll do to promote it, what I'll do to get it done, what the production schedule looks like, and what my budget is going to be like. You can't go into it doing that and then present that to a publisher and think that they're going to be okay with all of it. And if they are okay with it, you should run, because that publisher is predatory. That's what that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, interesting. Because you, as a publisher, if someone comes, I just realized, because I draw and write my own stuff, so I don't think about that too often. But if a writer comes to you, you want to know that they have a reliable artist attached, for example. And if they
Yeah.
don't, then that like, even if they turn in 30 great pages, you're like, okay, do you still talk to the artist? Or, and they're like, no, I'm trying to find a new one. You're like, okay, whatever, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of situations that are like that, and especially over 17 years. I mean, there was a time where I was just like, "Oh, everything." I mean, I was, young and dumb at the time too, and I'm like, "Oh, this looks good. It sounds interesting. I'll sign it." And then after a year of working with these people, you maybe get like one story out. There's been numerous headaches and problems along the way. They literally think that they already, by getting accepted by a publisher, that was the end of the work that needed to get done. And
Yeah.
in some cases, when I'm just like, someone's got to sell the book, someone's got to talk about the book. So I would be the person who then talks about it and sells it and everything like that. And then you turn around and get like these weird scenarios where the creators get pissed off at me because they're like, people associate the book with you, and it's my book, and you're taking the credit. And I'm like, I'm not taking any credit. I'm not taking any credit, and I don't own your book. But someone has to sell it. And if you want to be the face and the voice of your brand, of your book and your characters, do it. I'm waiting for you to do it. But there's
Yeah.
been a lot of creators over the years that they don't do it. And then they get pissed
Everybody
off when
needs to
someone else
get,
does.
yeah, they need to get out there more on YouTube. And there is like a certain type of creator where they're really antisocial. Sometimes they're like geniuses too. And and then it's like, oh, I might observe that. And I'm like, I wish you could get more on YouTube, because you'd probably sell even more, 'cause
Or
I like,
YouTube is great too, but at the same time, whatever they feel comfortable with. So if they feel comfortable with a blog, if they feel comfortable with a newsletter, updating their website, or whatever kind of social media platform, whatever they feel really comfortable with, because it has to be something. It's got to be something. Or do they have another plan entirely? Are you wealthy and you can just purchase advertising spots and have someone create commercials for you, or whatever it may be? I don't know. But if you don't have the money, you can make up for it in the time. If you don't have the time, hopefully the money's there. If neither are there, really reconsider what you're doing and the venture that you're going down, getting a publisher involved. Just do
yeah,
self-publishing and just do that. Don't start dragging in other people into the mix. And then now there's expectations, there's standards, there's benchmarks, there's things like that. And then you turn around and you don't want to do any of those.
yeah,
So
because we
just
are in an era where that's such a viable option. So if
yeah.
they can wait, and is it safe to say, kind of, for you, what you're almost using for submissions, one of the big aspects is you're using kind of a sixth sense of to minimize future headaches. So it's like,
Oh, 100%, especially at this point. And I kind of it's going to be tough come April and September from submissions at this point moving forward, because now I'm honestly treating them as I want to see resumes even. I want to see what it's like for you in terms of your work ethic, in terms of your professionalism, in terms of getting the job done. What have you been asked to do in the past? What responsibilities have you had in the past? Because again, I'm finding too many people that are going into this, they're not treating it like a business at all, they're not even treating it like a hobby. I'm finding too many people want more than full-time results for less than part-time effort, and that's just not going to happen. They look at some people who are really successful and they see the end result. They don't see all the hard work, the years and years and years, the failures, the trials and tribulations of the individual that put themselves through this thing. They see the end result, they see the success, they see the money, they see whatever raise, they see the audience on a platform, whatever it may be. They don't see all the work that that person did to get to that level. And I'm seeing too many people that are going down that path, and they see that and they go, hey, I'm just as good as so and so. I could have that. Are you going to put in the same work that they did? Because then maybe you could have that. But even then, you have to prepare yourself for the fact that you could do all that work. You could bust your ass day in and day out for God knows how long and still not have the level of success you think you're deserving or owed. So does that mean you don't bust your ass? Does that mean you're not going to do your best every single time? Because if the answer is no, then find something else to do or leave me alone. Go find somebody else. I want
Yeah.
someone who's like, I'm in it, and I'm in it not just because I think this is a favor to you, Pete, and Alterna. I'm in it because I want to be in it, because it matters to me. It matters to me, and it matters to the people that are going to be reading this book, that they're entertained by it, that they get something out of it, and hell, maybe it'll impact their life in some way, shape, or form. That's the kind of creator that I want.
Cool. Yeah, that is interesting. I'm always curious about that, of like some of these, what it's like to be getting lots of submissions. And we talked about it last time you were on even, and like I don't know, some random stuff, but one thing you were saying, the the books that are based in the public domain don't actually necessarily do that well, and you won't always pick them up. It's always just like interesting little
Yeah,
perspectives.
that kind of thing. I mean, it's not necessarily that. For me, with public domain, it's not necessarily about the sales, because someone could turn it around and make something really really interesting out of public domain works.
Yeah.
To me, it's more about what gets me excited as a publisher is a new character, a new idea, something original, and something
Yeah.
that the creator is putting that equity into. Whereas a public domain thing, at the end of the day, no matter how great you make it, no matter how much money you make on that, there's no long-term play really. You don't own it. You'll never own it. No one will ever really own it. So it's that kind of thing of, and eventually that I've seen it happen. That mentality, it's always in the back of the person's mind, and eventually that stops them from wanting to do more with that. So they'll go on then instead to something else, which they should. But there's no longevity in that. And I want someone here who feels the way I feel about making King Cryptid stories. I want that kind of person here that's like, no, whether Alterna publishes it or not, I'm making this story, and I'm making it for as long as I possibly can, because I believe in it and I believe in these characters, and I want people to read them and enjoy them and get a hold of them. That's the kind of creator that I want. And public domain works while it's like a fun project. It's like a fun side thing to do. It could even be lucrative for you if you do something with it. It's never truly yours, and there's always kind of a tinge of, you just know that it's not really something that your life is going to be centered around.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's fascinating too. What about the last thing we talked about last time a little bit is submissions not following instructions? I think, is that still an issue at
Oh
all?
goodness, yes it is.
So this is so
It's the
everyone submitting
equivalent.
to Alterna. If anyone's in the chat, you're thinking about it. It's like have a business plan, which kind of means have a team that's reliable and tried and true, and yeah, like whatever, and a plan going forward and everything. And then you're avoiding headaches. Don't have expectations where you're going to have backlash on Pete if it doesn't turn out the way you planned or whatever. Follow the instructions and have
Yeah,
a
they're not
project
hard. They're not
that you're
hard.
passionate about. Yeah.
But it's like the equivalent of when people forget to write their name on the test, that kind of a thing. And I know everyone has one of those days, but at the same time, if you're misspelling your own name in submissions, it's happened. If you're misspelling your characters' names, it's happened. If you're misspelling the title because you wrote it like 3 times in your submission and you're misspelling it, and that's how I'm catching on, it's happened. If you're doing all those kinds of things, it tells me that, look, this is not an interaction here where we're live, where you could misspeak or something or whatever.
Yeah.
This is, you didn't even bother to look at your submission twice
Oh yeah.
to proof your submission. I just look at that and I go, it's going to be a nightmare working with this individual on a comic.
Yeah.
So that just, it tells me a lot about the mentality, again, the work ethic that's there. You don't even bother to look through your submission and see that you did everything the right way before you hit send. You're just like, done, send. You're rushing it. You don't care. When
Yeah.
you're rushing your work like that and you don't care, it tells me you're going to rush your comic and you don't care. And I want people to care because I want them to care about their readers. I want them to care about their stories and their characters. They deserve better than just, let me just get it done and just rush it and send it out. And, Pete will take care of the rest. Screw that. No, I want you to care. I want you to care more than any other individual on this planet could possibly care about this thing you're creating. It's your baby.
Yeah. I heard about a guy on Twitter. He said, I'll send it always first to like a special email he set up that's just like a dump bin, but he always hits send to that first. And it's like to himself basically. And then immediately you notice everything wrong with it as soon as you hit send. So then you can edit it that way. I've used that for Twitter. I've noticed even if you post art, the second you post art, you notice what's wrong with it. So then I can fix it before publishing. But it's kind of fun to share art in these stages where it's like,
Yeah, I mean, it happens to everybody. It's just one of those things where, um, we live in a time and age where you can take that extra moment to look at it before you send it. And sometimes there's still going to be mistakes. I get that. But when it's very obvious, glaring mistakes, it tells me a lot about the individual.
yeah, cool. Interesting. Well, so we got 52 people watching. We'll kind of wrap up here, but I want everyone to know, it's the Alterna Winter campaign is live right now. It's it's just the latest issues. So if you want back issues, go to the website. But these issues are all episodic, so you can jump in and get these and get a taste for the series if you want to do it that way. It's funding on the website and on Indiegogo right now. And King Cryptid is in demand as well. Is there anything you want to say, Pete, for like an outro or whatever?
Thank everybody for watching today. Hope you guys give it a thumbs up because Narwhal deserves it. Even if someone's watching, you don't like me so much, give it a thumbs up anyway for Narwhal. And give me a thumbs down privately. Just send me a thumbs down emoji in a DM or something. But thank you guys so much for your support of Alterna, all of these great books that are here. And if you're a King Cryptid backer especially too, goodness gracious, thank you guys for making this possible. I've got a lot of stories to tell with this. It's a personal goal of mine. I want to get to 100 issues of King Cryptid. I don't care if that means I'm 60 something years old by the time I get to issue 100. I want to get to 100 issues. So
Cool. That's
thank
a
you
fun
guys
goal.
for
Yeah.
thank you guys for the first. I love those milestone issues. We don't get them so much anymore. You know what I mean? The issues 25 or 50 or 75. All those fun little things that you could put on there. I'm grateful we got to kind of a milestone where they came out in a Wednesday number 20, which is why I had Frankie draw that cover of the kaiju crushing the number 20, just to have some fun with it because it's issue 20 at an indie company is. To me, it's something that I think is so great. We've had a lot of great stories in there, a lot of great characters and creators, and hopefully have entertained a lot of people with those stories.
Yeah, that's another one. Next time I have you on, we'll talk almost maybe a lot about that because that's fascinating to me too. I love short stories and anthologies and everything. So, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Whenever you want me to come back on, it's always a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I appreciate you accepted the invitation. Glad to have you on the channel and catch up. Yeah, thanks for joining me. Chat, thanks for being here. And yeah, I guess I'll just end the stream now. I still, I've been doing this for years. I don't really know how to end the stream other than, click the button and wave.